Hey guys, welcome to another video, and this is a Gimkit tips and tricks video. I've been wanting to make this for a bit, and I've finally gotten around to making it. So, without further ado, let's begin. Tip 1, layer your terrain. So the first tip of the video out of the 10 tips is layer your terrain. As you can see, on the left side over here, we have terrain that is nicely layered. On the right side, we have terrain that is not layered and is just one layer only. To layer your terrain, you can grab a terrain of a certain layer. You can then increase or decrease the layer, and here we are. We have layered terrain. It looks, in my opinion at least, much better than non-layered terrain. Alright, on to tip 2. Tip 2. Remember that you should only place destructible terrain when you want it to be destroyed. I've seen this problem in many maps where creators use destructible terrain as walls or floor, and you have a gadget. Let's say that they gave you a gadget to, fight some zombies or sentries or whatever. Now, an unintended consequence of having a gadget is being able to break right through destructible terrain. So always keep in mind that any destructible terrain in a map where there are gadgets can and will be destroyed. Keep that in mind. On to tip 3. Tip 3. Make sure that your terrain is consistent. This means your terrain and props are consistent. This means that, let's say you have this tree that has no collision. If this tree has no collision, then this identical tree should also have no collision. This is done because you would want all of your props to make sense, to have collision, to not have collision or have collision, all of them together. If you have one prop that doesn't and one prop that does, it can be really confusing for the players. I have also seen this in many maps. Now, if you want or need to have props that have collision, but also want or need to have props that don't have collision, if you want both, then you can just mark one of them. For example, in this case, I can make the prop that doesn't have collision be slightly transparent. And here we are. There's now a visual difference between these two props to help you differentiate from which one has collision and which one doesn't. On to tip 4. Tip 4. You can use the tops of tree props to function as big bushes. So as you can see, if I grab the bush prop, like so, it looks like that. Now, if you use the top of a tree prop as a bush, it basically makes a really nice bramble. Or you can do it like this, just a little bit above the ground, and you have like a nice small bush. You can do this with all of the tree colors, including the dry ones and everything. And you can rotate them to add some more spice. On to tip 5. Tip 5. Remember your settings. So, the setting we're talking about here is the respawn setting. So when you respawn, you have 10 seconds of immunity, while you can resist all damage, except damage from lasers and damager devices, as far as I know. Now, let's say you want a game mode where you don't want this damage immunity. To fix it, you can go to settings, map options, and then health and shield. If you scroll all the way to the down, you can say spawn immunity 0. And now, I have 0 spawn immunity, and I can die right back again. on to tip 6. Tip 6. So let's say you have a sentry. Now, under normal situations, you will want your sentry to attack. But let's say you want your sentry to work like an NPC. Now, you could just set your sentry's team to team 1, but that will still attack players that are not on team 1. It will only work in collaborative game modes. So, you could put a barrier right over the sentry. This would prevent it from attacking players of any team. And as you can see, completely docile. Remember though, that you can still stand on top of the barrier. Now, this is an unfortunate consequence, but you can always just make the barrier smaller. Of course, using the NPC device would be better in these situations, but if you don't want to, but currently, the NPC device is underneath the season ticket cap. And if you don't want to buy the season ticket and you don't want to wait, then this is a good idea to create an NPC. Alright, on to tip 7. Tip 7. Don't use item spawners in the place of item images. This is because for item images, you can walk right through them and you can't pick them up. But you can pick up stuff from, well, the item spawners. Now you could just clear the player's inventory, but if you just want to display an item, always use the item image. I have seen this in many maps too, and I would just personally recommend to use the item image. It's a better device for this purpose. Now, if you want to be able to grab the items, then of course use the item granter. Item granter. I'm sorry. I get a bit tongue twisted. I meant item spawner. Alright. On to tip 8. Tip 8. If you want to create a don't look down style game mode, where if you fall, you die, do not use lasers. In the short term, like such a small platform as this, lasers will cost less memory than zones. However, if you want to coat the bottom of an entire map, then you should absolutely use death zones. Since also death zones can be invisible, and as an added benefit, they are really easy to customize, and you can give them good visuals. Now, let me see how this will look if I don't use a death zone. Also, if you don't know how to create a death zone, just grab a zone and hook it up to a respawn device. Now, let me just scrap my precious death zone. Goodbye, goodbye. And let me grab a laser beam. Now, in the short term, this will cost less memory. However, in the long term, this absolutely will not be a good idea. Since the more lasers you need to add, lasers have a max length. And so you need to keep on adding more and more of them if you want to, well, code an entire map. Now, if I do this, it'll certainly work, and it'll certainly kill me. However, it does not look, it can't be invisible, and as an added downside, it costs more memory in the long term. On to tip 9. Tip 9. If you have a game mode where you're just moving around and it's not very complicated, it could be a good idea to add an answer questioning screen. Now, of course, you could create an energy mechanic if you want your game to be educational, but oftentimes people want to earn XP while playing Gimkit creative levels. So just adding a small answer questions screen while you're playing the game, you can answer a question a minute and earn Gimbucks. Now you could always add the energy mechanic, but I would not recommend that if you want to create a fun game mode. Now, of course, a good idea would be, if you want a game mode that can be both educational and fun, you can just add an option. But, well, it's your choice. You can add customizability, you can add options, or you can just add a small screen that allows you to earn XP and Gimbucks. Alright, on to tip 10. And for our last tip, tip 10. Put your checkpoint in safe spots. For example, here I have a checkpoint right over a sentry. This means that when I respawn, there's a large chance that I get instantly killed. And we don't want that. We want our checkpoints to be in a safe spot. So this would be bad game design, and I would want to put my checkpoint in a better spot than this. Alright, that was my final tip. This has been Mashpot out, and I hope you guys liked my video. I don't know, please like and subscribe, as this is a new channel. Not new channel, per se, but it is a pretty small channel right now. Thank you, and Mashpot out.